Full vote.
Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission. The date is Monday, August 10th. Will everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made? Any concerns anyone has? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
A motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Everyone is here. Okay. Next item is the approval of the agenda for the meeting that was held on Monday, July 13th, 2015. Are there any changes that need to be made? Or any concerns that anyone has?
I have a point of clarification. It says I abstained from the minutes. I think I actually voted. I think we had talked a few meetings ago that you don't have to abstain. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, that's correct. If you were absent, you do not need to abstain from the minutes.
I must have been gone on that particular meeting, so okay. Very good. Thank you. Anyone have any other comments or concerns? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Moving on to tonight's public hearings. The first one is Town Place Suites. The location of the project is 11588 Lenore Road. The request is for planned unit development concept review on 1.87 acres, a planned unit development district review with waivers on 1.87 acres, a zoning district amendment within the commercial regional services zoning district on 1.87 acres, and a site plan review on 1.87 acres. With that being said, can the proponent of the project please come forward? State your name, spell your last name for city record, and tell us a little bit about your project, please.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm John Ferrier with CSM Corporation. My last name is spelled Ferrier. And the reason for our request is the Town Place Suites brand. If you know anything about hotels, the prototype changes over time and they require property improvement plans to keep the franchise flag. And one of the requirements of the Town Place Suites new prototype is a breakfast nook, which is a 300 square foot addition to the lobby area. So that's what we're asking for, is approval of the 300 square foot addition. The reason we're here is because it requires revision to the base area ratio, which is per code is 0.2 and we're at 0.21. So that's one of the reasons that we're here.
Okay, anything else you have to add?
No, I'm here to answer any questions, and thank staff for working with us on this request.
Okay, we'll let you know if we have any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that being said, Julie, will you take us through the staff report, please?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, as stated, the applicant is asking for a PUD concept review and PUD district review with waivers, as well as a site plan review to add a roughly 300 square foot breakfast addition. The building addition would serve continental breakfast to the guests of Town Place Suites. It would not be open to the general public, and it does not add any guest rooms to the site. The addition area does provide for continuity in the building materials on the exterior of the building, and the applicant is also proposing to include several bike racks on site in order to accommodate bicycle parking needs. Staff is recommending approval of the development as well as the waiver to increase the BAR for the site from 0.2 as required by code to 0.21.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments or questions or concerns that anybody has on this project? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question about the two lost parking stalls real quick? There seems to be plenty of parking on site, including some shared parking with the adjacent neighbor. I'm assuming that adjacent neighbors within the planned unit development district that we're talking about?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, yes, there is a shared parking agreement between this site and the property to the west, and they are part of the same PUD. Shared parking was approved along with the original development proposal back when the site was originally developed.
Okay. So we didn't see any concerns in the staff report about any problems parking or anything. They exceed code, so there isn't any problem with that.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, no issues with parking requirements on site.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing that this is a public hearing, is there anyone out in the audience that has any concerns about this project? Not seeing any. Okay. That being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. I move to recommend approval of the planned unit development concept review on 1.87 acres, planned unit development district review with waivers on 1.87 acres, zoning district amendment within the commercial services zoning district on 1.87 acres, and site plan review on 1.87 acres based on plans dated July 2nd, 2015, and the information included in the staff report dated August 7, 2015.
Second.
A motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Move forward with your project. Thank you very much. Moving on to the second item for tonight's agenda. It's variance number 2015-09. Location of the project is 6401 West City West Parkway. The request is to reduce a minimum 25-foot buffer located along the western border of the subject property as required by certain developers agreement dated July 2nd, 1985. Julie, will you be the one that will be
Yes, I will.
speaking about that? Very good.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as part of the original development agreement for this particular site, there were development plans that were approved which indicated roughly a 25-foot buffer area between the property line and the parking area of the site. With the recent construction and improvements of the Shady Oak Road, that buffer area has shrunk along with as a part of the negotiations between the city and the property owner, the property owner has requested that the city approve a variance memorializing the change in that buffer distance. So staff is before you this evening with a variance final order request to approve the variance as noted.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Commissioners, any comments or concerns about this variance? Okay. Not seeing any. That being said, I'll entertain a motion. Seeing that there's no one out there, in case there's anyone hiding, is there anyone out in the audience that has any comments or concerns? Not seeing any. With that, thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I move to recommend approval of the final order 2015-9 based on the plans stamped dated August 3rd, 2015 and the information included in the staff report of August 7th.
Second.
The motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to the city code amendment sign code. By city staff, the request is amendment to amend the city code chapter 11, section 11.70 relating to sign permits, including adding or amending requirements for entry monument signs, freestanding signs, and wall signs. With that being said, Julie, I'm guessing you will be presenting that one as well.
I am. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, back in 2013, city staff prepared some proposed changes to the sign ordinance and brought those forward to the Chamber Government Committee as well as the Planning Commission and City Council. As a part of taking those sign code changes through the process, there was some discussion about things such as sign clutter, enforcement action on temporary signs, potential conflicting language in the city code, and staff was directed to go back and research several of those issues further. So staff has resurrected that issue in 2015, and we had gone through some outreach with the Chamber Government Committee to address some of those issues with regard to directional signs and for lease signs and temporary signs. And we were working on getting ready to bring that draft language back to the Planning Commission for your review. Then in June, the Supreme Court reviewed a case with regard to signage and made a determination that affects content-based signage. So as a result of that, the city will have to go through and do a comprehensive review of its sign ordinance. So what you have before you this evening are only those portions of the sign ordinance amendments that we were working on that are not content-based related. So there is a shorter list than we intended to come back to you with originally. So just to kind of breeze through what some of those changes are that are proposed this evening, the First is an addition to add a definition of entry monument signs. As you're aware from some of the city council work sessions, the city council is working on a project for entry monument signs at several locations within the community, and so this language would add a definition for that type of sign. In addition, in the commercial zoning districts, wall signs are limited to 300 square feet on 300 square feet in size. The amendment that's before you this evening clarifies that 300 square foot maximum would apply to not only a single tenant but also a multi-tenant building as well. Then the other change, or the third change rather, is with regard to wall signs in the industrial and office zoning districts. The current language in the code talks about accessory use. Staff is proposing to revise that language to rentable space, because in looking at those sign provisions, staff looks at the leasable area that a tenant is occupying in order to calculate the amount of signage that they would be allowed. And lastly, the provision regarding double face signs. Right now, code allows or requires a maximum of 18 inches between two sides of a double face sign. Staff is proposing that be increased to 30 inches between a double face sign. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Commissioners, now would be the time to ask any kind of questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
can I just inquire about the 30-inch depth of a double-face sign? Where did that suggestion come from?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, when staff was looking at changes back in 2013, we found that many of our double-face signs, by practice, if they're monument style, are larger than 18 inches between the two fronts of the sign. So in order to address that trend in signage as well as any issues that might occur out in the real world, if you will.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up, I was only curious on that because sometimes street corners, with frontage on two streets, some people like to flare their sign out in plan view like a V shape, and I didn't know if that was perhaps why or if that even the topic is even addressed.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as a part of the broader sign revisions that we were originally looking at, we as staff were taking a look at that, especially with for lease signs. But right now, because our code talks about for lease signs and that runs afoul of the content-based determination made by City Council, we'll be looking at that a little bit further. So this evening we're looking at double-face signs, and in the event that there was a sign that was V-shaped, that 30 inches would be measured at its widest point.
And why the change from 36 inches as proposed in 2013 to 30?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, in our research, 36 was what was originally proposed back in 2013. In research to commercial real estate agents as well as sign companies, and in taking a look at other cities' codes, the feedback that we got from other communities was that 30 is more likely what they see on the ground and what the requests are for. It meets the needs of the constituents.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a couple questions.
Please.
So the entry monument sign and what the council is looking to do for entry monuments coming from other cities or neighboring municipalities into ours, what does LRT and how does the entry monument sign coincide with the LRT rail structure?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm not quite sure that I understand the question with regard to entry monument signs and LRT. The entry monument signs, that initiative that council is pursuing, identifies, I believe it's 6 or possibly 8 locations. I apologize, I don't know right off the top of my head, as various locations where there could be entry monuments placed designating that you're now entering Eden Prairie and creating a sense of identity. As a part of that, several of those proposed sign locations at this point, staff is working with MnDOT to identify a couple of areas where the first of those signs could be placed, and then further down the line we would be identifying, we as a staff and City Council will be working together to identify other locations, specific locations where those could be proposed.
So the locations where the LRT line will be coming in from the northeast, that is not on the proposed right now, but it might be in the future.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, off the top of my head, I know that some of the locations that are considered are 494, 62, and 212, up at our northern boundary near the UHG campus, and over at Dell Road in 212. Yeah, I apologize, I don't know them all right off the top of my head.
I was just curious if LRT was a part of that conversation or not, or especially since we don't know exactly the line placement and everything.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, LRT is not specifically a part of that. There have been some conversations about whether or not, as a part of some station areas, it makes sense to maybe include some type of signage, identity signage as a part of that, but that will all remain to be determined later on.
So tonight is just addressing a microcosm of what an overarching, more comprehensive look at this sign language after more further in-depth legal analysis of the court ruling. So we'll get another crack at this to take a look at it then.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, there will be a comprehensive review of the city's sign ordinance coming forward to you in the future that addresses the content-based issue that the Supreme Court has identified. We also intend to bring forward regulations for the TOD and town center area as a part of that very comprehensive review of the sign ordinance. The amendments before you this evening, the city attorney has reviewed and advised that they do not run afoul of the recent Supreme Court decision. So these are the ones that staff has brought forward for your review and consideration.
Julie, when do you expect that we'll have a deeper dive into this conversation? Next couple months?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, yes, I believe it would be in a couple months down the road.
But this year, you believe?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I ask one more question about the phrase public easements? In the red line of the ordinance, under the scoping provisions, I think it is, I forget what subdivision, talks about the exclusion of it, no signs within the public right-of-way or public easements. The public easement comment is not changed. It's consistent with the prior ordinance language. But I'm curious on that topic. When we have parcels that are replatted, are public easements typically requested of a property owner for a front yard abutting a street? And if so, are those public easements typically dimensionally consistent with the signage setback dimension that's in the signage portion of the ordinance?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, when a property is platted, it is typical to request and receive from the property owner or developer perimeter easements on that lot, including the front yard. Depending on the type of utilities that would be proposed to be located in that area would define the width of that easement. So for instance, a standard easement may be 5 or 10 feet, or if you've got pretty significant utilities in there, there may be a need to have a wider easement. Typically in a commercial district, you know, all setbacks are different in different zoning districts, but in a commercial district, signs are typically required to be set back 10 feet from the property line. So depending on the utilities that may be located there might be something to take a look at further down the line when signage becomes an issue or becomes an identified issue, but many times it does fall within that required easement and setback area.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone out in the audience, so I don't think we need to move any further with the public hearing. If there's no more comments or concerns, we can move ahead and now entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, move to recommend approval of the amendment to the City Code, Chapter 11, Section 11.70, relating to sign permits, including adding or amending requirements for the entry monument signs, freestanding signs, and wall signs based on the information included in the staff report dated August 7th, 2015.
Second. A motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we can move forward. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Good conversation. With that being said, Julie, are there any planners reports for tonight?
Not tonight, sir.
Okay. Any members reports from anybody?
No.
No? Okay, any continuing business? Any new business? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.